Welcome to SQL Family podcast. This is episode number 8. And our guest today is Michael Rees.
Hi Michael. Hello. Thank you for accepting my invitation for that podcast. Basically, this podcast is not only about the technical stuff. Yeah, it's also about to show you as a person. Yeah, you know your habits, your other things. What are you doing daily basis and etc. Yeah. Let's start. And could you introduce yourself to
Sure.
the people?
So my name is Michael Rees. I'm a program manager at Microsoft, currently working on Azure Data Lake and our internal big data platform called Cosmos, not to be confused with Cosmos DB.
With Cosmos DB, yeah.
I've been with Microsoft for almost 19 years. I started in December 98. Originally working on XML support in SQL Server, and then I worked on SQL Server stuff until about 2011, 2012, doing the Beyond Relational scenario in SQL Server 2012, where we shipped things like file table, semantic search, more spatial support, XML indexing, and a couple of other things. And then I moved into the big data space back then.
Yeah, okay. And where are you living exactly?
So I currently live in a small suburb of Seattle and Bellevue called Sammamish. Which is about 20 minutes drive from the Redmond campus.
My friend living there.
Okay, cool.
Because you mentioned that you are from Germany, yeah?
No, I'm from Switzerland originally.
Switzerland.
Yes.
Oh, sorry, yeah. So I thought at the moment that you are living and working from there remotely or something.
No.
Okay. So you are a local guy here.
Yes, I'm a local
since
for about 19 years now, yeah.
And how long or from science version of SQL Server you working with?
So I basically joined the SQL Server team for SQL Server 2000. So I was working on the first set of XML features that we added in SQL Server 2000.
Good to know.
Yeah, so you can.
So you was behind the scenes.
Yeah, so you can blame me for XML and OpenXML and some of the other stuff.
Good to know. If you have some question, not only about the U-SQL, so also we can ask you about the XML and all of that stuff.
But Michael, you are not involved in the JSON stuff, which works.
So the JSON stuff in SQL Server, I did talk to the people when they started adding it to give them a little bit of background information about the design decisions that we made with XML, because JSON is very similar to XML in the terms that it's a hierarchical format. So I wanted to kind of give them kind of a little bit of a hint to make it similar, so that people that know how to process one hierarchical format can very easily apply that knowledge to operate on the other hierarchical formats as well, basically. But I was not directly involved. That was actually done by our team in Serbia.
In Serbia.
Yeah.
Okay, but I can see the consistency. So it's really easy. If you have any experience in playing with XML in SQL Server, no matter in which version, it's easy to adopt the previous knowledge to work with JSON. So that's fine. We don't have to learn new stuff.
Yeah, that's kind of what the idea was around that.
Okay, so I would like to ask you, do you have any favorite or specific tools you are using during your daily work? I mean, about when you have to play with SQL Server or U-SQL or data lakes?
Well, you mean besides Outlook?
Yes, of course.
Yeah, of course.
Well, as a program manager, of course, like some of the things that I do a lot is one thing is helping customers with like some of their questions about how to do certain things, how to debug certain things, how to optimize certain things, and also obviously prepare demos for both blog posts, documentation, or presentations. And so for U-SQL right now, my favorite tool for doing that is basically the ADL extensions in Visual Studio. So that's where I would spend most of my time in like looking at job graphs, trying to figure out what people are doing to help them improve their query performance or improve their query efficiency or also their cost efficiency. So some of the things I would look at are, for example, the vertex execution view and the AU modeler are two of the things that I often would use to like help people improve their cost efficiency and understand their jobs. Another thing that I obviously do when I do my own development is basically use Visual Studio development experience for doing the U-SQL and code development. Otherwise, one tool that I would like to get to know better is our VS Code tooling around Visual Data Lake. And so I'm kind of planning on probably doing one of my next demo projects, probably just use VS Code instead of Visual Studio for doing that.
Yeah, I've noticed that there's an extension especially for U-SQL,
Yes, there is.
So these are the things that I'm currently using. Obviously other things are like Notepad++ for doing some looking at results and understanding encodings of documents, etc. And otherwise, it's just the standard program management tools like Skype and Outlook and OneNote and Excel and things like that.
And you are working with U-SQL and Cosmos, how do you think? What is the current direction of that kind of all those stuff?
Well, one thing you notice is that there are a few kind of trends that are occurring not just within our own offerings but also like competing offerings and open source offerings. Is one thing that you see is people are getting away from doing low-level cluster management and low-level programming paradigms, and they go into like what we call serverless PaaS offerings like Azure Data Lake Analytics is, and the ability to operate at higher levels of abstraction. So the PaaS offering, the serverless PaaS offering is primarily to manage costs better. Like you don't have to manage clusters, you don't pay for provisioned things that you're not using. You're basically have a
resources,
you basically have shared resources that you have first tips on if you need them, but if you're not needing them, they are basically available for other people to use, and so it becomes like a kind of self-managed back-end system. Another thing that I see is the higher level of abstraction in terms of programming goes into both going away from going more towards like SQL-like languages for doing the processing, like you saw that with MapReduce when it went to Hive. You see that with Spark where it's going from the link-like extensions for Scala and Python and Java towards like Spark SQL. You see it happening also at the level of what people actually want to do with the data. It's going away from just doing SQL-like analytics into doing machine learning, into doing more domain-specific processing of the data, because the data becomes more unstructured that you're operating in these environments. So you want to have more specific, domain-specific code that you scale out in. So in Spark you see that with like Spark ML having that. In U-SQL you see that with our extension libraries and our whole extension framework that is geared the cognitive services aspect and so on. But also the framework that we provide for people to do it themselves.
I'm thinking about a little bit different thing, because I would like to ask you, what role does do MVP plays from your perspective, how MVPs can improve, for example, the technology you are responsible for?
So, I mean, the MVPs have always been very instrumental in a couple of ways with the technologies that I've been involved in, be that SQL or now Azure Data Lake and U-SQL. I see them as early adopters. I mean, I expect MVPs to often be like people that are using our things at the beginning, give us feedback. Basically, are the first external customers, so to speak, to like give us feedback and use it, and also potentially contribute things to it. Like especially with the extensibility model that we have like some MVPs that provided, let's say, an Excel extractor. Tillman did that recently.
Yes.
And so that kind of is one role. Another role, of course, is around amplifying the messaging, like go and teach, because if it just would be us teaching, then it would be fairly we wouldn't scale as well. So having MVPs help us with the teaching and bring their own stamp on it, and then bring the feedback back that they hear about it is another way. Another way is basically doing community engagements, running user group, not just for our specific product, but for the whole data platform aspects as well, and also help the customers understand how these different components that we have in our ecosystem in Azure fit together, and what are like the sweet spots to do so. And last but not least, obviously, it is also basically helping amplify our messaging by, for example, inviting me to a podcast.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you have any hobby?
Yeah, so I have a few hobbies. Like you were in the presentation today, and you noticed there was a green car on a racetrack setting. So that is one of my hobbies, taking my green car onto autocross courses and try to improve my driving skills. Another one is scuba diving, although I haven't had much time recently in the last year or so to do that. And in the winter, I do like to go skiing and spend time in the mountains and so on. So that's a few of the major hobbies that I have. If I'm outside of writing U-SQL scripts and so on.
Right.
Yeah, that's it. And the very popular topic recently is work-life balance.
Yes.
How do you think about it, and how you can manage that?
Yeah, that's always a hard question. The more fun you have at work, the more work-life balance you have in terms of yourself. But then if you have family and so on, you have to make sure that there's time for family in it as well. And let's say it this way, at Microsoft at least, there is an understanding that people should have a work-life balance. And so there is a little bit more agreement around that, that you might be out on the weekend and not necessarily available online, except for if you are on a call rotation, which is a little bit more work-life balance than, let's say, if you're in a startup or so. But it still is, I would say, compared to a normal job, you're having, if you're passionate about the work, there's more work than at home, and there's more work as part of your life, basically.
So the passion,
yes. So you always have to like trade off that a little bit.
Yeah,
but
it's
also
hard to explain that to our life, to our
partners.
wives.
Yes. But I think that yes, you have to take time off at some point in between, either by taking some vacation or reserving, let's say, weekends to like spend time with the family and so on. But yeah, if you would talk to my wife, she would probably also think that I'm first married to work and then to her. But on the other hand, yeah, we're still married, so.
Okay, so it works.
Yeah.
Which is good. But you are living very close to Redmond. It's about 15 minutes by car, yeah?
It's about, let's say it's 20 to 25 minutes.
It depends on the time, yeah.
And it depends if there are police officers on the way. So.
But you have a sporty car, so it should not be a problem.
Yeah, the car is not the problem.
That's right. Okay, so maybe a question like this: what hints would you give to young people who wanted to start working on the market.
You mean start working
in the IT market?
As
the
an
IT market.
guys, yeah.
Yeah, that's an interesting thing. So the first thing I would say is work on understanding your customers. Regardless of there are a lot of interesting areas in IT, but I think the important part is to be successful is understanding what problems do your customers try to solve, and then understanding what are the best tools that help you solve it. Obviously, you will have to have some foundation in terms of understanding the technology and the technology space and potentially different offerings in that space, like maybe become an expert in obviously Azure and Azure Data Lake. That's what I would say, but also Spark definitely would be something if you want to be in the big data space. And then find basically the customer segments that you feel you can understand well and be passionate about and can provide solutions in. That's if you want to be on the IT side. And then you can bring that in either as becoming an employee of a company in that space or becoming a contractor and or consultant in that space. If you want to go into actually building the system, then I think what helps again is understanding the customers, etc., but also understanding the technology. And we have MVPs that end up becoming part of the product team, for example, because they are not just passionate about the technology, but also contributing to the technology, and then they go through the interview process and basically understand how to be successful there. So it is all, I think the most important part is that you understand what area are you interested and passionate about, and what areas do you think customers can benefit from your understanding and passion and capabilities.
Apart from the technical knowledge, you have to also have some communication, how to communicate to customer, how to try to solve their problems, and this is something that can be very tough for young people. They have to learn a lot, I think, from the older colleagues to have the ability.
I would not disagree with that, yes, and there are obviously ways of how they can learn that, they can engage in community events to speak, to just attend meetups, to listen to people talking about their problems and so on. It's more than just building code. I mean, when I actually went into the IT area when I was in my teenage years, I learned programming at high school. I kind of liked it, but I then started using it as a way of making some summer pocket money by working at some local companies and university as a programmer. And you quickly learn that your programming skills are needed definitely to help solve the problems, but understanding the problem that you actually need to code for, understanding the customer demands, being able to communicate with the customer to translate his do what I mean into actually telling him what he means, and then being able to actually build a solution is almost as important if you really want to be more than just what I call a coder. I mean, you can find a niche where you basically code what somebody else tells you to code, but I'm not sure that's something that is fully fulfilling at that point in time.
Yeah, but it is a case when you are working as a developer and you are very close to the customer, yeah. Like in that case you are described, yeah. But in the biggest company, or let's say corporations nowadays, it's I think the developers doing a separate thing and BAs doing separate things,
yeah.
And BAs are contacting with the customers, yeah.
Yeah.
So
yeah, but even as even we at Microsoft, I'm a program manager, so I'm not writing the code myself. I'm translating the customer demands into designs that then the engineering team can implement. But even on the engineering team, the engineers are normally building better solutions if they really understand the customer problem and can communicate back to me and others about what they want to build, so that we can assess if their solution is actually going to help us address the problem or not.
Yeah.
So I think the communication is still important at some level.
Yeah, communication skills is the key. Yeah, and you as a program manager you are in the dark side, on the dark side currently. Yeah?
Yes.
I heard that developers call that.
Yes.
Okay.
But we have the cookies, so that's the nice thing.
True. Do you have some animals at home?
Not at the moment. We had some rabbits and some
rabbits.
Yes, and some chickens, but they were all eaten by the wild animals around us. We currently have a bald eagle's nest in one of the trees next to our house, and we have visits of bears and coyotes, and our neighbor sometimes sees cougars and lynx.
So all those animals are in your area?
Yes.
Wow.
So there is, and some of the neighbors have dogs, so we sometimes can use them as pets, so to speak. No, right now not. I mean, our chickens got eaten and our rabbits got eaten, so at that point in time we decided to give up.
Okay.
But this is an unusual answer. Typically, we hear about dogs and cats, and sometimes about parrots and
fish,
and or hamsters. But I've never heard about coyotes or bears. So.
Yeah, I wouldn't call them pets, but they definitely live in our neighborhood.
When you have a conference like this, or you giving lecture to user groups, how do you prepare yourself to do a speech?
Well, I have been giving presentations now for a long time, so the preparation is primarily along the following dimensions. First, is it a new topic? If it's a new topic, obviously I have to build up the material, understand the story that I'm going to tell, and then basically make sure that the slides and the demos kind of help me tell that story. If I have given the presentation a few times, at that point in time, the main focus is to make sure that the demos run and that I'm not having any surprises with, let's say, the flow of the slides. Sometimes PowerPoint seems to be losing my animation order or stuff like that. And primarily it's like understanding the audience, what is the level of the audience, what is their interest, and then tailoring even a previously given presentation, tailoring it to that audience, either by making the storytelling more relevant to them or adding some demos that is more relevant to them. But one of the secrets of successful presentations is normally that you have a set of base stories that you can kind of combine into different things and then have different levels of your storytelling. So if you talk to a CXO type person, you focus more on business value, on like understanding the high level picture, versus if I go and talk to an audience at SQL Pass, I'm probably going to more talk about like the coding experiences. Or if I go really deep, I go and talk about like internal architectures so that people can better tune or performance tune or debug their performance of the product. So it all depends a little bit on the target audience. But the main thing is understand what story you want to tell, make sure that your slides go logically into that story, bring people along on the story. So that means you start a little bit higher level and then you dive in, and make it relevant to that audience. Like if you talk to business people, make it more business focused. If I talk to my field people that need to sell it, make it more relevant for them so they know how to sell it. If it's for an engineer, make it relevant to the engineer so he understands how to use it and how to performance optimize it, how to debug it, and so on.
And do you still feel nervous before your presentation?
That depends on how well I slept the night before, and whether I'm not feeling like the stage fright anymore that I used to feel when I was like during my presentation careers. Unless it's like in front of 1,000 people or so, like the audience size still matters a bit in terms of nervousness, or if it's like a keynote presentation where you're like supposed to give the keynote, that's probably more nerve-wracking than the topic that I understand deeply. It also depends, like if I own the area, if I'm very familiar with the area, I'm not less nervous than if it's something that I have not presented about yet, or it's like not necessarily my area of expertise.
Yeah, makes sense.
I would like to go a little bit more to your background, but when did you find SQL Server for the first time? Is it during your studies, or?
So I did do my PhD back in Zurich at ETH, or Swiss Federal Institute of Technology, for those that want to know the English name. And during that time, my professor, Hans Scheck, he was taking a sabbatical at Microsoft Research back in the mid-90s, and he came back and talked to us about OLEDB and SQL Server being re-architected using OLEDB to like make this composable infrastructure architecture in SQL, which if you look at SQL Server, you probably wouldn't notice if you look at it from the outside, but internally it still like uses, for example, the ROSAP provider as like the connection between storage engine and the compute part of the engine. And so that was kind of the first time that I heard about it. The first time I really got in contact with was when I was in Stanford doing my postdoc, and SQL Server was just launching SQL Server 7.0, and the research group led by Jim Gray in Microsoft in San Francisco basically had an event that I went to, and I saw SQL Server 7.0 the first time, and I kind of felt they have some interesting capabilities like linked servers and English query and so on, and I found that's kind of interesting. Although it wasn't really the reason why I then ended up working for Microsoft, I must say. At that time, like I was building my own database systems in semi-structured data management, Project Lore at Stanford. I was working on and SIMIS, and before that I built my own scale-out update SQL database or object-oriented database on top of Oracle. Now, one thing I knew was when I finished my PhD in Switzerland, I had two career choices. I could become an Oracle consultant and make a lot of money helping people understand the complexity of Oracle, or I could go and build a better database system that would make such consultants superfluous. So I basically decided to go and build something better than the complexity that was Oracle 7 at the time. Did that answer your question, Damien?
Yes, of course. And the next question would be, because we are, me and Kamil and other people, we run a community which is quite big in Poland, and how would you convince people to be a community leader or at least a community speaker? Because we have a lot of great people, but they are somehow afraid of talking in public.
Oh, well, I mean, the thing that I think community engagement helps you with is getting over that fear. I mean, you are among people that are basically your peers. You have people that know the area, that are seeing you more as a friend than a foe. It's not like in work where if you give a bad presentation, you probably have a few people cheering that it was bad, so they might get the promotion and not you, but in the community it's all about basically helping each other. So going to a community event and speak gives you the ability to exercise your speaking muscle, so to speak, learn from it, and basically get the confidence to then speak at potentially more important events as well. Also, being in the community, I think you often, like, one of the things that I feel the more I'm like helping out in the community, just either be it an online community like, I don't know, Stack Overflow or MSDN forums, or at events like SQL Pass or the event where I was speaking last week with you guys, is that the more I feel I talk and contribute, actually more I learn. And the more I think I grow personally as well, because people have feedback that is potentially unexpected, but helps me understand where they're coming from and applying that in my day-to-day work as well. So I think contributing, participating actively is overall net positive. People are nice, they are encouraging you, they are there to help you with feedback and so on. It's not like that they're there to kill you if you're like pronouncing a word wrong or have too many pauses or as in your speak. It's all about basically making each other great, helping each other out, and everybody has something that they can teach somebody else.
Yeah, so they actually shouldn't feel any fear.
No, they shouldn't be afraid of that. I mean, they can potentially just talk about some cool code they have written and so on. And the thing that often helps is, like, if you present on something that you really feel passionate about and you have and the passion shows through. I mean, if your demo is crashing or so, people will forgive you that if they notice that you are like really passionate about the thing, and you will learn. I mean, it's all a learning experience. Nobody who is presenting at a high level did that the first time he presented. I still remember the first time in high school I presented. I was like, I wanted to crawl into the floor and hide. If you see me now present, you wouldn't think that has ever happened before.
Yeah, and tell us, are you perfectionist in your, in your work or in your private life?
I wouldn't call myself to have OCD, but I'm definitely trying to have optimize the perfection to a level where you can deliver it. I mean, obviously, you have to sometimes deliver. Delivery is a feature, is what I normally say, and which I learned from some of my early mentors at Microsoft. So being utmost perfectionist and never deliver obviously is the wrong thing to do. However, I try to design the things in a way that makes it easy for people to use and kind of have a nice experience around it. So I mean, I mentioned I drive car for fun, and so one of the things that I notice is some car manufacturers are better at like optimizing the benefit-cost trade-off between giving you a good driving experience and still making the car affordable than others are. And there is kind of a little bit of you can kind of see, if you have pride into the workmanship and what you're building, then you are to some extent a perfectionist. But you can learn how to deliver something that is maybe not 100% perfect in the first release, but allows you to improve perfection up to the point where the return on investment becomes negligible. As an example, when we did the XML support in SQL Server 2005, one of the things I was never happy about was the performance and size complexity of the XML indexing that we had at the time. It was good for certain use cases. It was very good for like some very generic use cases, but it had a little bit of a high complexity in terms of optimization, and it very quickly like led to some really huge indices and so on. And so I was kind of, my perfectionistic thing would have wanted a better indexing story right from that, but we needed to ship the thing, so we basically left what we had, and then we improved on it based on customer feedback and learnings that we had, and we had some really like helpful customer and MVP interactions that then helped us deliver the XML indexing features in 2012 that gave you the path-based indexing and so on, which is kind of giving you a better experience, which is a much better experience at that point in time. So sometimes you have to ship, and then would I have done more in a later thing? Yes, but at some point in time you reach the point where you're basically just polishing something that is already looking perfect for most everybody else. And then you probably should stop and do something else.
Yes. It's not our first interview when we can hear that the most important thing is to love to learn, love to share the knowledge, and it's great that we can still hear the same from you, that you have to learn a lot, I think, during your career. You have to be very active, and sharing the knowledge is also very important, I think, because from that point of view you can also learn from other people, and this is what we are doing all the time. And but my last question would be, which achievement are you satisfied the most? I think you have a lot of them, but what is the best achievement you think for you during your career?
I think the achievements that I'm most proud of is when I basically go out with some capability and I see people using it and providing both their pleasure and sometimes also their displeasure about how the feature helps them solve their product. I think that's what I kind of feel is my what I'm proud of is basically that I have delivered a lot of things to both in SQL Server and now in Azure Data Lake and so on, that really help people solve the problem. This was the reason why I didn't go into academia, but decided to go into basically development and research to help solve people's problems. So if I see people using my stuff to solve interesting problems, that kind of gives me a huge satisfaction.
I like the sentence you used during your presentation when you were talking about the version 1 of Data Lake, and was the people loves to hate.
That was Azure Data Factory, you mean?
Azure Data Factory.
Yeah.
I noticed that you have maybe not fun, but you are very frequently use the Twitter.
Yes.
Are you a fan of Twitter, or why you are using in that way of communication?
Yeah, so I mean, I use Twitter primarily as a way of getting information out. It's a very low friction way of communicating with a large amount of people and allows people then to reshare it easily. Am I a fan of Twitter? It's for that purpose, yes. There's some other purposes, especially in the US right now, that I think Twitter is probably a little bit over-represented and so on. There's all the Twitter bullying aspects and so on, which fortunately have not reached our area as much as some others. I think it's just one of the tools that you have to get your message out and keep engagement, two-way engagements with the community and with people that you want to have an interaction with. It definitely has been quite useful for sharing information quickly. Also listening to what people are talking about in the areas that I'm interested in. Currently, basically, if you use Azure Data Lake, U-SQL with or without dash in your tweets, I will probably pick it up and see what you're saying, and then if I have something to contribute, I will reply to it.
Okay. And really last question is about the team you are working with.
Yeah.
How big the team is?
I actually don't know the exact number right now, but basically on the one hand we have the PM team, which is not just me, but my management and my colleagues. that cover Azure Data Lake Store, Azure Data Lake Analytics, the different aspects, the jobs, like the portal experience, the Visual Studio development experience, the actual language experience. Some of the things that we are still working on, like interactive capabilities and so on. And then we have the engineering team. The engineering team right now, I'm primarily working obviously with the language engineering team and the tools engineering team. So we have people for that in obviously Redmond, and we have the tools team, for example, like Visual Studio and VS Code is done in our Beijing office. We have some people that are working on some stuff in Serbia, more on the interactive side, and the store side also has a team in India, so we are kind of quite geographically dispersed as well. And well, the interesting part is obviously that we are not just building the Azure Data Lake service, we are also building and running and supporting the internal big data service called Cosmos inside Microsoft. So that means we are daily answering questions and helping with issues, etc., that our internal customers have, in addition to building that external service. And that's probably something that is kind of unique in that sense, because let's say when I was doing SQL Server, I was selling boxed product, or maybe SQL Azure DB, and I really didn't have like an internal business running directly on the infrastructure that I was responsible for. Like, yes, MSIT would be using SQL Server, but they had their own database administrators doing that. We are the people that run the internal big data platform for Microsoft as well. So that's kind of what there is a big difference there.
And the Microsoft's employees are testers.
To some extent, yes, as well, yeah.
Okay, we are talking about the team of 10 people.
So the PM team currently on the ADLA side, all up with everybody, is probably about 30 people, 30, 40 people. If you're looking at the engineering side, just the language side, I would assume it's about 100 people maybe, depending on whether you count some of the tools teams, etc. So it's definitely it's not as big as SQL Server, but it's still a pretty big team and so on.
Yeah.
But you need that because we have to keep our service running internally, as well as do innovation on the external service and internal service as well. So you need a certain critical mass of engineers to be able to deal with that.
And also the product must be developing very fast, yeah?
Yes, I mean, we are trying to do, so right now we are basically doing half-yearly planning sprints, and then basically try to ship about every 4 to 6 weeks a refresh based on what we are delivering on that. So yes, we have to be pretty quick. Now, some of the features still take a long time, like our partitioned output, which is the top frequently asked question on our feedback page after, I think, if you count together all the interactive parts. That feature has been in development for a while, but because it's a fairly fundamental re-architecture of some fundamental assumptions that we had earlier, it's going to take a while, and a lot of components have to pull their work together. We are getting close to releasing that, hopefully early next year. So yes, even if you have 100 people, in the end, many of those are working on different parts, and in the end you will have 1 or 2 people working on one particular aspect, so it's still taking some while.
Okay, yeah.
Yes, I was just thinking how big is the investment, because I can imagine that 40 managers, let's say one team is around 100 people, and that there are more than one team, and we see this from the perspective of from 1 or 2 features on the portal, and we cannot see how much work it really took you to deliver this feature. And well,
yes,
this is really impressive This is really impressive.
I mean, the point here is obviously we want to make it easy, and making it easy means that we have that there is more cost to it for us, because making it easy is actually harder than just putting something out, and you have to do the final mile yourself.
That's right. It's easy for us to use it, or for our customers to use it. So you have to pay for it. You have to do a great development on the other side to make it easy. Yes, that's great. That's great.
Okay, so at the end of our conversation, tell us where we can find you, where the people can find you, and your blog, and information and knowledge you're sharing.
So basically the best way to reach me obviously is so we have an email alias that I created specifically to reach out for Azure Data Lake Analytics and U-SQL access, which is just usql@microsoft.com.
I told you, Damian. I told you yesterday.
Right.
Yeah, my Twitter handle is Mike Does Big Data. Quite simple, although it's a long Twitter handle. And otherwise, I try to read U-SQL tagged questions on Stack Overflow and on MSDN forum, in the Azure Data Lake forum. So that's kind of where I currently hang out. Otherwise, you might try to catch me at events like SQL Pass, Ignite, and other places. But these are kind of the main places. We do have a blog on MSDN. I have a personal blog there. Michael Rees is I think you can find me there. Or the Azure Data Lake blog is also where we kind of hang out and post stuff as well. And if you have any like feature requests or questions or so, feel free to like reach out. Trying to answer every email that we get.
Great.
Sometimes takes a little bit. Trying to catch up on email right now again, but
Okay. Thank you very much, Michael. Thank you very much for that discussion, for that chat.
Thanks for having me, and I hope to see you either diving in the lake or at least skimming on it with SQL Server.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you very much.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Have a great day. Bye.
Thank you for joining us, listening this podcast, and time spent jointly.
You can find this podcast on website sqlplayer.net.
Share this episode if you like it, and let us know if you want to hear a specific person from SQL community, or maybe about interesting topic or technology.